So if I could paint the two pictures, there's a picture the Bible describes of a servant leader, a father who has learned governance through all of the thousands of decisions that he has had to adjudicate with his large multi-generational family. And as that person becomes a patriarch and a grandfather over that larger family, and you look at the men and women and children thriving underneath his leadership, and then you go to that man and say, would you please serve us by coming into a position of governance over this village in concert with other fathers of families whose children are flourishing? Would you set policies for this village so that we can make the best, the wisest decisions for our future children and grandchildren and great grandchildren? And so those men come together at the city gate and they begin to make very difficult long-term decisions because all of them have the same incentive. They care about the future. They're not getting a huge identity. They already have built their assets and they've begun to pass those on to their sons and daughters and other families. And so now they're free to try to make the wisest long-term decisions on behalf of the families. That's one picture. That's sort of the biblical picture of servant leadership that comes from the idea of eldering a village, eldering in governance over a political entity. And so that's one picture. Now, this other picture is that you have career politicians who are looking and just trying to decide what kind of career can I get into that will help me really fill this void I feel in my identity. Can I be successful in the sports arena? Could I be successful in the business world? Oh, it looks like I could convince people really well of things. So maybe I can become somebody who could run for office in politics. And then imagine all the accolades. I can't become a rock star and get people like shouting and excited about me, but I might be able to get a lot of votes and then be able to stand on a stage and, be able to make speeches. And so you start to desire this part of you to be filled. And then you get the political arena flooded with people who have this sort of self-centered motive and they're doing it because they haven't become something yet. Like that's what's happened. And this is so difficult for us because we desperately need, and this is why when I'm writing this book, The Ruling Household, part of what it describes is when ruling really begins, which is this process of the fivefold mission of the family. And it goes fruitful, multiply, fill, subdue, and rule. So you don't rule until you've been fruitful, which is have children. You don't rule until you've multiplied, which is to have grandchildren. You don't rule until you can fill, right? Which is to begin to see all of the implications of your growing family and what it's doing in a particular region. And then you don't rule until you subdued, and that is through legal means, your influence and your financial and spiritual influence is beginning to take governance over smaller entities. And then at that point, you're elevated into a position of rulership, again, in some kind of plural setting with other rulers who have similar families that have been fruitful, that have multiplied, that have filled and subdued. That was what God created originally. And so we need to understand the ideal because it helps us understand how far we've come from that ideal. And so when you hear these kinds of messages, and when I listen to JD Vance and his concerns, I don't know what was in his heart. I don't know why he said the thing about a childless party ruling. But I wanted to sort of articulate, there is sort of a biblical argument here for why that's not ideal. Why having childless people in increasing positions of rulership is not great. It doesn't mean the other party that have children aren't doing the same thing. It just
Right.
means that, man, that's how far we've come. We can't even see the disadvantage that creates.